When people talk about classic adventure or action RPGs on the NES, you usually hear about The Legend of Zelda. But there's another game just as ambitious, just as unique, that often gets left out of the conversation. This is StarTropics, a tropical, story-driven action-adventure with yo-yos, submarines, and one of the most controversial puzzles Nintendo ever designed.
Have you ever played this?
StarTropics was released in 1990 by Nintendo, developed in Japan with a Western audience in mind, and only released in North America and Europe. At the time, Nintendo's biggest adventure hits were fantasy-based like Zelda, or platformers like Mario. Nintendo's R&D3 team wanted something that would appeal more directly to Western players, something less fantasy-heavy and more grounded in a modern setting. So instead of swords and kingdoms, you get a baseball-loving, ball-cap-wearing protagonist, a modern age, a story told through dialogue-heavy cutscenes for more cinematic presentation, and a lot of US pop culture.
But fear not, men. A hot dog will not be made of dogs.
What is it made of, sir?
Nobody knows.
As I stated, the game was developed internally by a team who had experience working on the NES hardware at a technical level, helping to push what the system could do late in its life. This matters because you can really feel that expertise in how polished and structured the game is compared to earlier NES titles. It feels less like a traditional NES game and more like an early attempt at cinematic storytelling. You play as Mike Jones, a teenager visiting his uncle, Dr. Stephen Jones, on a tropical island. Shortly after arriving, you learn that your uncle has gone missing. From there, the game sends you across a chain of islands, uncovering secrets, meeting strange characters, and slowly realizing there's something much bigger going on. There's a lot of twists and turns, and it's very well done. It may sound like a cop-out, but since the game is currently available in the Switch Retro library, I really don't want to spoil anything for new players, so let's just say that the story escalates way beyond a simple rescue mission. StarTropics is an action-adventure game with a strong focus on dungeon exploration. Movement happens on a grid system where you hop from tile to tile. Or if you're like me, leap straight into the water over and over. Your main weapon is a yo-yo, chosen because it feels like a relatable modern object rather than some mystical sword or bow. As you progress, it upgrades in range and effectiveness, which will subtly change the way you approach combat since you have to maintain a certain number of hearts to maximize its power. You'll also gain access to projectiles, special abilities, and unique items that are tied to the puzzle solving. Dungeons are at the heart of the game. They're filled with enemies, traps, puzzle rooms, and boss fights. They require a mix of timing, memory, and experimentation. It's simple enough, but it's not easy. You will die a lot. Another standout feature is how story-driven this game is. Compared to something like Zelda, StarTropics has more dialogue, more defined characters, and a clear narrative arc with a major curveball. Now, this wouldn't be a StarTropics video if I didn't mention the note. At one point in the game, you get a message from his uncle saying, "Tell Mike to dip my letter in water." This wasn't a metaphor or an item that you missed in the game. The StarTropics packaging originally came with a physical letter from Mike's uncle in the box. You literally had to take out this real-world paper and get it wet. It reveals a hidden message at the bottom of the page with a frequency for you to use in your sub. It's one of the most creative puzzles in retro gaming history and also one of the most infamous among fans. This puzzle was fun and unique, but also an anti-rental and anti-piracy measure. You had to have this code to continue in the game. If you rented the game, bought it used, or if you're currently playing it on the Switch and you don't have that letter, you could not progress. These days, we have more resources, but back then, unless some hero wrote it on the cartridge or rental box, you were stuck. Outside of dungeons, the game emphasizes exploration and interaction. You'll travel between islands using a submarine, talk to NPCs, and gather clues about where to go next. Compared to something like Zelda, StarTropics is much more guided, but also more narrative-driven. It wants you to follow the story, not just explore freely, which makes it feel more focused, but sometimes more restrictive. When it released, StarTropics was well received and saw pretty decent success. Players liked the unique setting, memorable music, and story-driven approach. It even got a sequel, Zoda's Revenge StarTropics 2, which improved on the original in many ways but didn't gain much traction for a number of reasons, up to and including being released late in the NES lifecycle. The NES was on its way out and the Super Nintendo system was taking over. StarTropics just didn't get the long-term spotlight it deserved and never reached the same level of recognition as Nintendo's other franchises. StarTropics is one of those games that feels both familiar and completely unique. It borrows ideas from Zelda, but it adds its own personality, like a modern setting, a stronger narrative, and some truly unconventional design choices. It's not perfect, but it's memorable in a way that just many games in the NES library aren't.
Help, captured by evil aliens. Tell my nephew to use code 1776.
In short, a land of liberty.
So what about you? Have you ever played this, or is this your first time seeing it? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you figured out that letter puzzle on your own. And as always, stay tuned for more quick dives into retro classics and video game history.